Hi everyone, I'm back with another story time. Have you ever found a cat or a dog or another animal and you've asked your parents to take it home with you? Then this book will be just for you. This is Mercer Mayer's Elsie and the Critter Kids, The Cat's Meow. Alright, let's begin. It was a quiet night in Critterville. Elsie was sleeping when a strange sound woke him up. It was coming from outside his window. Elsie jumped out of bed. "Dad, what is it?" Elsie asked. "Let's find out," said Mr. Critter. "It sounds like a baby crying," said little sister. Everyone followed Dad down the stairs. Up and down Elsie's street, the lights were on in every house. Everyone wanted to know what was making that strange sound. "Hey, it's just a cat," said Elsie. He pointed to a cat sitting on a fence. "I bet it's hungry," said little sister. "We should give it some milk." "It's probably lost," said Mr. Critter. "We should leave it alone so it can find its way back home." "That sounds like a good idea," said Mrs. Critter. "Now back to bed." Elsie felt sorry for the cat. He wished there was something he could do. The next morning, Elsie met Gabby in front of his house. All of a sudden, something brushed against Elsie's legs. He looked down, and there on the sidewalk was a cat. "Hey, that's the cat from last night," said Elsie. Elsie and Gabby walked to school. Little did they know, the cat was right behind them. When they got there, they went to their lockers. As Elsie reached for his notebook, the cat walked into his locker. Elsie didn't notice. He shut his locker and with a bang took off down the hall. Later that morning, Mrs. Peacock, the principal, was walking up and down the halls to check that everything was in order. Suddenly, she heard something strange. It sounded like a meow, and it was coming from Elsie's locker. A few minutes later, an announcement came over the loudspeaker. "Mr. Critter, please report to Mrs. Peacock's office immediately." "Mr. Critter, chop chop," said Mr. Hogswash. Elsie pushed back his chair and slowly stood up. What could he have done wrong, Elsie wondered. "Mr. Critter, I've found this cat in your locker," said Mrs. Peacock. "You know the rules. No pets in school. That means no cats, too." "But Elsie began. Just then the lunch bell rang. The cat leaped on top of Mrs. Peacock's desk and jumped on her head. Then it ran out of the room. "I never want to see that cat in school again," said Mrs. Peacock, "or else." Elsie chased the cat down the hall to the lunchroom. The cat leapt on top of the counter and knocked over a pot of stew. Then the cat jumped into a big bowl of Jell-O. "Gross!" Susu screamed. Just as Elsie reached for the cat, he slipped, and he knocked into Susu, who knocked into Gabby, who knocked into Tiger. Meanwhile, the cat dashed out of the room. Elsie and the Critter Kids ran down the hall after the cat. They bumped into kids along the way, but they didn't stop. They had to get that cat. Elsie and the Critter Kids followed the cat into the playground. "It's time for you to go home," said Elsie. He bent down to pet the cat. "Meow," said the cat, and then the cat turned and walked away. The cat walked around the playground to the other side of the school. Then it crawled in a basement window. The cat jumped off the window ledge and to the floor. Then it climbed inside a big pipe. The cat made its way to Elsie's classroom. Suddenly, Elsie heard a familiar sound. He turned around. There inside the heating gate were two green eyes staring right at him. The cat was back. After school, the cat was waiting for Elsie by the front steps. He and the Critter kids took the cat to Elsie's house. "Mom, I've been thinking," said Elsie. "You know what we really need?" "No, what, Elsie?" asked Mrs. Critter. "A cat," said Elsie. "I don't think so, dear," said Mrs. Critter. "I think little sister may be allergic to cats." "Yeah," said little sister. "They make me sneeze." There was nothing more Elsie could say. Maybe Gabby could keep the cat. Elsie and the Critter kids sat down on the curb in front of Elsie's house. "Can you keep the cat, Gabby?" asked Elsie. "Nope," said Gabby. "We have a bird." "I can't either," said Gator. "We already have 2 cats." "Count me out too," said Tiger. "My mom is allergic to cats." "Me too," said Timothy. "They give me hives." All the eyes turned to Henrietta. "No can do," she said. "My dog hates cats." "I know what we can do," said Elsie. "We can keep the cat in the clubhouse till we find out who it belongs to." "Good idea," said Gabby. "Anyway," said Elsie, "how much trouble can one cat be?" The next day was Saturday. Elsie was watching his favorite cartoon, X Critter. "Good morning, Elsie," said Mr. Critter. "Hi, Dad," said Elsie, his eyes glued to the TV. "Well, I'm off to golf," said Mr. Critter. "I just have to get my golf clubs out of the clubhouse." Elsie jumped up. "I'll get them for you, Dad," said Elsie. He didn't want his dad to see the cat. Elsie dashed into the clubhouse and grabbed the golf clubs. Suddenly, he heard a meow, and then another, and then another. He turned around. Elsie couldn't believe his eyes. There in the box was the cat and 3 kittens. Elsie told the Critter kids about the kittens. They decided to make some lost and found signs. They then went downtown to put them up. "We can't let just anyone have these kittens," said Gabby. "What do you mean?" asked Elsie. "We have to be careful," said Gabby. "We have to find each kitten the perfect home." "How are we going to do that?" asked Elsie. "We have to interview everyone," said Gabby. "That's how." The next day, Elsie and Gabby set up a stand in front of the Critterville Market. Before they knew it, there was a long line of kids. "Name?" asked Gabby. "Fiona," said a very small girl. "Do you presently have, or have you ever had a cat?" asked Gabby. "No," said Fiona, "but I've always wanted one." "Put your address here," Gabby said. She handed Fiona a clipboard. "We'll be making house calls later today." Fiona tiptoed away. Then the next kid in the line sat down to be interviewed. Later that day, Elsie and Gabby went to Fiona's house. "This place is too big and fancy," said Gabby. "But I bet Fiona would give a kitten a really good home," Elsie said. He and Gabby walked up to the front door and rang the bell. "Why should we give you one of our kittens, Fiona?" Gabby asked. "Because I would love it," said Fiona. "Which one do you want?" Elsie asked. "This one," said Fiona. She picked up one of the orange kittens. Elsie and Gabby went to Buster's house, the second one on their list. "I don't know about that dog," said Gabby. "Toby wouldn't hurt a flea," said Buster. "He loves cats." The 2 kittens climbed onto Toby's back. He took them on a ride around the room. "Which one do you want?" asked Elsie. "The orange one," said Buster. That brown one is too skinny. Gabby and Elsie went to every house on their list. Nobody wanted the brown kitten. Suddenly, someone ran up to them. "Lullabelle! Lullabelle!" she called. "Is that you?" The cat turned around. "My cat, my darling cat! I finally found my cat," she said. "Thank you." She walked away with the cat in her arms. Elsie and Gabby took the little brown kitten to the clubhouse. "What are we going to do?" asked Elsie. "No one wants this kitten." "We have to find it a home," said Henrietta. "But who's going to want it?" asked Tiger. "Someone very special," said Elsie, "because it's a very special kitten." "We'll all have to take turns taking care of it," said Gabby. "Elsie, you take tonight." That night when Elsie went to bed, the little brown kitten curled up on his pillow. "Poor kitty," said Elsie. He stroked its fur. "Don't worry, we'll find you a home." Just then the door burst open and little sister barged into the room. "I knew you had a kitten in here," she said. "You're going to get it. Mom told you no cats." "Shh," said Elsie. "It's only for tonight, just until we find it a home." "Nobody wants that kitten," said little sister, sneezing. "It's not even cute." "Well, neither are you," said Elsie. The next morning, the kitten wasn't lying on Elsie's pillow. Elsie looked under his bed. He looked in all of his drawers. He even pulled everything out of his closet. "Psst, psst," Elsie called. "Come here, kitty." But it was no use. The kitten was nowhere to be found. "Elsie, you're going to be late for school," Mrs. Critter called. Elsie picked up his knapsack and ran down the stairs. He'd have to look for the kitten when he got home. But it looks like he has a visitor in his backpack. Elsie ran to school. He slid into his seat, and just as the light bell rang, suddenly there was a meow. "What was that?" asked Mr. Hogwash. "Did I hear a cat?" Mr. Hogwash headed down the aisle toward Elsie's desk. By accident, he stepped on Elsie's knapsack. The kitten screeched and jumped out of the knapsack. All the Kidder kids screamed. The kitten dashed out of the classroom and down the hall. It didn't stop running until it got to the teacher's lounge. No one was there except for Mrs. Peacock, who was having her morning tea. The kitten jumped right into her lap. "Oh my," said Mrs. Peacock. The kitten purred and snuggled closer to Mrs. Peacock. She smiled and gave the kitten some cream. "What a pretty kitty," said Mrs. Peacock. "Well, tea time is over. Back to work." Mr. Hogwash grabbed Elsie and dragged him down the hall to Mrs. Peacock's office. "Mr. Critter has broken the rules again. He brought a cat to school," said Mr. Hogwash. Suddenly, there was a meow. "What was that sound?" asked Mr. Hogwash. "It came from your desk drawer." Mrs. Peacock opened her drawer. The little brown kitten hopped right out into her lap. "But Mrs. Peacock, you know that cats are not allowed in school," Mr. Hogwash said. "I think you're making a big deal out of nothing, Mr. Hogwash," said Mrs. Peacock. "After all, it's just a little kitty." After school, Mrs. Peacock stood on the front steps with the brown kitten in her arms. "I understand you've been trying to find a home for this kitten," said Mrs. Peacock. "I just want you to know that you have found one." "Yay!" the Critter kids cheered. Elsie smiled. He knew all along that the little brown kitten would find the most special home of all. The end. Thank you, each one of you, for tuning in and reading another story time with me. Stay safe and be kind.